It's really nice to be invited to this. I'm really excited about talking about enterprise IT software solution, whatever whatever words you want to put in front of the word architect. It's a pretty passionate topic for me. Yeah, as Daryl said, I'm here in Sydney, so I flew in 2 nights ago, so I'm not sure what time zone I'm on. I think I'm somewhere in between Hawaii and Australia right now. Um, but I'm really glad to be talking to you tonight. This is a pretty exciting topic. It's actually, I think, getting more exciting again, which is nice. The last 10 years or so have been an interesting roller coaster ride. Sort of the EA is dead, long live EA. Kind of thing. And so this is a really nice opportunity to get back down to the basics and the sort of practical aspects of applied business and technology architecture, which is where Iasa has spent most of its time, is trying to figure out what do successful architects do and how do we repeat that. We get a lot, being who we are. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I was the chief architect for Dell Pan Asia. So I was based in Japan and then Singapore. So welcome, my fellow Singaporean here. And then after that, went back to the States and was a chief architect for a digital asset management company, for the Sears point of sale replacement. Done a lot of retail work and a lot of digital asset and metadata workflow work for some really, 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 really large stuff. The around 2002, I started Iasa simply because it was pretty difficult to be an architect in the sense of the practice and what we do and how we do it. And I know for a lot of folks, it feels like we still have a lot of questions about value and having organizations and customers recognize us. But I will tell you, we are a long way from when I started 15 years ago, or 14 years ago, I should say. Um, we started an association because we have problems to solve that we simply cannot solve alone and that we cannot solve within a single organization. You can't define a professional capacity inside of one company. You can only define a professional capacity with something like, around 100,000 practitioners is the kind of accepted average as to when that starts taking over at a national level. And I think that this webinar represents that. So I get really excited about talking about success of architecture as a practice. And when I say as a practice, meaning you know what to do next in your current architecture, that there is a good practice, if not best practice, and that we have the resources to do the job that we're hired to do. The question becomes, what is that job and what is that professional expertise that we bring to the table? And I think this is where the real excitement kind of builds for me is, I love hanging out with architects. Believe it or not, as many differences as we have interprofessional inside of the profession, we actually mostly do the same work, and that includes business architects all the way to hardcore programming software architects, if they're any good and if they're successful in the role. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about tonight is what are the success capabilities for an architect? What makes you an architect? And we're going to bring this back to something we call the IDABOC, which is built on the 5 pillars of IT architecture. Rick, no, I guess I'm just going through puberty. I don't know what it is. I have a weird sense of humor, by the way. About 7 years ago, we built a platform for what is architecture called the Iasa Skills Taxonomy, because we were getting a little tired talking about what it means, what architecture as a definition is, and wanted to talk about what architects do to be successful. And so we created a body of knowledge, which we called the IDABOC, and have successfully taught and certified against the IDABOC for many years now. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what's made into, or what the IDABOC is built out of. And the primary component of that is what we call the 5 pillars of architecture. Now, again, we can argue whether to call it enterprise architecture, IT architecture, information architecture, or whatnot at a later point, because what we're going to talk about tonight are skills. By understanding the skills of an architect, we can decide some really important things. The number one of which is personal. Am I, or do I want to become an architect, or continue to grow my career as an architect? What is the job, and do I want to do it? I can tell you that there are many professions that I don't want to do, right? I don't want to be an accountant. I don't particularly want to be a doctor. I know I don't want to be a lawyer. So how did I learn those things? Well, I learned exactly what they do, and then I made a decision. The other thing that we can work out is, how do I best interact with architects? How do we work together, and as well as how do we work with our customers? And then finally, and I think in many ways, most importantly for us individually, is how do I execute on my own personal and professional career path? How do I grow my career? And that's really where all of the notion of a profession stems from. It's really twofold. How do we keep unqualified, incapable practitioners from practicing? And how do we advance our profession into the future, both individually and collectively? And so these are that's the real basis for where this comes from. So we've stayed away from the common things that we do, especially in IT, which is a mistake, which is to focus on process and artifact. And we've focused in primarily on what makes you a good architect. And we did this not just in a couple of places. We did this all over the world. We've had chapters and have chapters from Japan all the way through South America, North America, Western Europe, and Australia. So it's a pretty widely adopted and widely recognized body of practitioners, because Iasa is really just a whole bunch of people like you and a whole bunch of people like SIG's partnerships with the ACS SIG, which I'm very happy to see in existence. And we have a lot of computer society partnerships. What we did really originally, wow, that's really slow. Let's just watch that move across the screen really slowly. What myself and a couple of others did is put together a body of chapters in about 60 countries. We have about 80,000 in our professional body, of all types, whether they're newsletter or free members or paid members or whatnot. We brought together that group of practitioners with an eminent set of distinguished fellows: Scott Ambler, Lynn Bass, Grady Booch, Paul Clements, and many, many others who are leaders of the field. Andy and I worked together later in the organization to then define what architecture is and how it's practiced. And let me just press the actual button. And what we did there is, first we did a bunch of qualitative analysis. So we did qualitative analysis with thought leaders and practitioners. This is absolutely essential, and we do this today. We continually do focus groups with architects to understand what do successful architects do and how do they do it. And then we combine that with quantitative analysis. And I think the really amazing part of what we're going to talk about tonight in the IDABOC is we've built a kind of professionally managed Archipedia. Let's go with Archipedia, where the quantitative analysis can actually happen from practitioners all over the world. You can debate and discuss every single skill in the taxonomy, as well as how it's written, as well as add to it, as well as get things removed from it. But we do so through an educated board of practitioners so that it retains its cohesion. The goal is to build a career path for architects that then represents the as-is state of our profession as well as the to-be state, and then links that with the world's thought leadership frameworks and reference models out there. So we work and talk with TOGAF practitioners, EAF practitioners, PF practitioners, ITIL, COVID, all the standards, including IEEE 1471, as well as ISO 42010. The outcome of that is this constantly updated IDABOK, which includes information on all 5 pillars. Now, why do we call them the 5 pillars? We call them the 5 pillars because if you have skills, enough skills, and that's not a mathematically measured concept, though we do have a strong statistical basis for it. If you have these 5 skills, you are an architect. If you are missing one of these pillars completely, then you're not an architect. And that's a pretty satisfying thing to be able to say. In fact, what it gives us is the ability to understand how to create an architect and what that person is and does. The first of those pillars is what we call the business technology strategy pillar. And this is the means and method by which you develop a strategy and execute that strategy that has both business and technical impacts. We also have human dynamics, which are the soft skills, the EQ, and the other aspects of organizational politics. Quality attributes, which are cross-cutting concerns. IT environment, which are the elements of our practice that are related to running and delivering on technology, as well as design skills and how to solve problems with common and whole system design concepts. In all of these cases, we went out and did surveys where we looked at, for example, people that said things are essential or things are deeply or very important. And as you'll note there, one of the things that came back highest on that is, of course, the human dynamics side of the world, the ability to work within a system of people to accomplish a strategy. And within that, if you look at this in a slightly different way, we've figured out that skills in these areas or knowledge of these skills, and each of these capabilities includes, or these pillars includes something like 8 to 10 capabilities, and each of those capabilities includes somewhere around 2 to 3 sub-skills. So we've done this at a very deep level of understanding about what each of the practical aspects of architecture is. What we found is that the vast majority of architects in the world claim a specialization: business architecture, information architecture, infrastructure, software, etc. But it is this foundation body of knowledge that actually makes you an architect. And this is something that's absolutely essential to the notion of profession, and that is that all practitioners base their practice on a shared body of knowledge, a shared language, a shared ability to communicate, a shared set of target objectives, and a shared skill set that allows them to deliver those even in a specialized function. Now, you'll have seen this in many of your organizations. You'll have seen software architects working on, obviously, software projects, business architects working, likely not even reporting into IT, but working hand in hand with software infrastructure and information to deliver an entire framework. And on top of that, we have a role, effectively a generic role of enterprise architecture, so that enterprise architecture, as opposed to being a top-down activity, in fact is a bottom-up activity, meaning at the ISO we turn things on their head quite regularly. We would prefer to see software infrastructure, information, and business architects close to the edge of the organization, working directly with customers and business partners, as opposed to a large, centralized, top-down ivory tower EA group that is disconnected from customer, business, and technology strategy. This has shown itself to be pretty powerful and pretty accurate over the last number of years. And in fact, you'll see with our push, with the world's push towards agile DevOps, agile business, I should say, not just agile projects, as well as the role that business architects and information architects can play in successful business strategy, that the ISA definition actually touches a lot more of the enterprise. We showed here a little link to some of the original concepts. Many of you may have heard of the Microsoft Certified Architect program, and there are other capability models in the world, not quite as sophisticated as the ISIS. But if your organization has looked at Sophia Plus, or if you've looked at the TOGAF capability model, in many of those cases we've drawn links between those and the ISA capability model. So if you look at Microsoft's MCA, they had a leadership and communication skill set, strategy skill set, process and tactics skill set, IT environment and depth skill set for technology, and all of those map effectively into the foundation body of knowledge without touching specialization at that point. Now, our focus today is going to be on this foundation body of knowledge because that is the most effective part of the IDABOK. And then at the end, we'll point you to a URL where you can review each of these skills in depth, which is on the website. But first, we have to talk a little bit about IT architecture and what it is because, well, it just wouldn't be an IT architecture meeting if we didn't have some discussion about the definition. Now, I believe over time that the ISA definition has held its own as both a cohesive definition for the profession, and cohesive is important, as well as a motivating definition for growing our professional capacity. It isn't the only definition in the world. There are at least two other majorly adopted definitions for architecture. One is software architecture from the SEI, and from a book called the Software Architecture in Practice, which was the first architecture book I ever read. And it goes, software architecture of a program or computing system of structure of the structure. I'm sorry, I got really confused and bored reading that one. So I'm going to go to the next one. Enterprise architecture is the organizing logic for the business process. Okay, I got really confused and bored on that one too. You know, the problem with these is this would be roughly the equivalent of defining medicine as the structure of the systems of the molecules, the interaction of the curative substances that change the shape or dynamic of those molecules. Are any of you bored and confused yet about medicine? We go see professionals because they solve problems for us. They help us do something we can't do ourselves. So let's first talk about the definition of architecture as something that's motivating to the people that want to utilize our skills. Now, is software architecture related to structure of a system? Absolutely. Is it related to its elements and their properties? Absolutely. But this is a definition for people who are concerned with designing software systems, not a definition for a profession. Now, if you were to go to dictionary.com, you would find a different set of definitions for different kinds of practices. If we were to take medicine as an example, you would find two definitions. One's a noun and one's a practice. There's actually five, on dictionary.com, but there are only three of those that interest us today. One is the definition of medicine as a substance, and it goes something like something that cures you. Not complicated, highly motivating. The second one is medicine as a practice, and that goes something like a person who cures you. Again, they're a little more sophisticated than that. The art and science of deploying or utilizing curative substances in helping people treat disease or disorders. Again, the notion of the motivation for going to see a doctor is built into the definition. There's actually a third that I think is the most interesting, and the definition is the medical profession. 3 words. We don't really know what medicine is at any given time. Just go ask those smart people over there who have spent 20 years learning what it is. And that one motivates me a lot in ISA because of course, the professional aspect. Now, our definition at ISA is really simple. The art and science of designing and delivering valuable technology strategies. So the motivation is built into the definition, right? You come to us when you want a valuable technology strategy. The noun version of that is a valuable technology strategy, or just a technology strategy. The valuable part comes from measuring the success of utilizing that strategy or executing that strategy. And IT architecture as a profession is an occupation that requires considerable training and specialized study. So what does that make an IT architect? Well, there are about 5 schools of thought on this in the world. Meaning, and when I say schools of thought, these end up being a little more like religion. And if you get all 5 of them in a room, get boxing gloves because there's going to be a fight. The first one we'll talk about is the person that drives a quick iterative process for creating code. This might be, the tech lead on an agile project. What is architecture to you, sir? Oh, man, architecture is just that quick spike where we do the reusable iterative stuff, reusable stuff that we're going to use. But we want to get to code as fast as possible. Now, if you go to a different kind of company, let's say a defense manufacturing company, you'll end up with a different definition. The person that does advanced engineering and design. You'll have met these people. Many of them used to be mechanical or structural engineers, and they've gotten moved into technology, and they're looking to create the most sophisticated design principles and engineering designs you can imagine. In fact, if you look at that SEI definition long enough, you'll start to see this is the same definition. Now, there's another group of people that have worked for really big companies and get involved in projects early on, and they do the selection of a project's frameworks and products, and then they move on. Now, there's another person also working for very large companies, many of whom have outsourced over the last couple of decades. And what they describe it as is a person that leverages the right service providers and vendors and gets them to do the work and just make sure that they don't make too many horrible mistakes. Finally, you'll see another group of people, the person that models business from an IT perspective. So you'll see a business analyst looking at, you can imagine a business analyst in there modeling out a business process as this goes. The problem is that all of these are correct. These are roles that we do fill from time to time. But really, the truth is the one definition, an architect is a technology strategist for the business, will allow us to function in all 5 capacities, depending on the needs of our customer base and our particular client or employer. So are you an IT architect? Well, to do this, we have to talk a little bit about what skills you have. The number one skill, in my opinion, that makes you an architect, that defines us against the other technologists in an organization. Notice I didn't say IT staff, technologists in an organization, is this thing called business technology strategy. These are the skills that are required to identify, design, plan, and support a technology environment that provides the basis for competitive advantage. Now, I just read that, and I know you could have read it yourself. What does it mean to have a basis for competitive advantage driven from technology? A really good test to see whether or not you're acting as a business technology strategist or your group is to ask yourself, how many business cases for your organization were originated from your architect team in the last 12 months? It's a quick gut test. It's a, sniff test or whatnot. It's not the ultimate decision-making factor. But business technology strategy skills are the ability to be credible in a business strategy setting while maintaining your technology skills and your ability to provide technology innovation within those business models. It is a set of capabilities that lead to that directly, and it starts with basic business skills. Now, this is going to start sounding a little bit like a little mini MBA, but I want you to think about the different organizations out there and the basic business competence necessary to run them how an organization fits in its competitive landscape, how technology aligns with those business goals, and knows what the business of the business actually is. For this, we talk a lot about different types of organizations and how they fit and where they play in the overall business model of the organization. You also need to think about the TCO, the cost benefit analysis, the ROI, payback period, NPV, valuation, and the dozens of other measurement and strategic planning tools necessary to validate and utilize or plan strategic innovation. How do you understand industry or plan strategic innovation? How do you understand industry concerns, trends, and conformance to standards is a fundamental part of that. So really, business technology strategy is the means by which we learn to talk in the same language as our business partners. Notice I didn't say the business. I consider any employee of a company to be the business, first and foremost. Now, technology has traditionally played a more operational role, as its primary focus originally was automation of back office tasks. That has changed. That world is dead. There is no business strategy without technology strategy today. Social media, machine learning, data analytics, predictive analytics, all of the different aspects of big data, of decision making, of learning and capability in our systems, all the way from e-commerce to disruptive technologies in the home, such as IoT, have changed the relationship of technology to business. Famously, we've had bank CEOs say, we're not a bank anymore, we're a technology company. And that reality has not yet quite caught up with the IT department. And honestly speaking, the architects need to dive in a really heavy-duty way in driving this technology strategy into the future. Now, of course, probably something that's comfortable to everybody on this call are IT environment skills. IT environment skills include all the functional, procedural aspects of a technology organization. It's how we run things, how we do things. It's how we create new things. This isn't just writing code. This is application development, infrastructure, project management, or the PMO, platforms and frameworks that we use, change management as both an IT group and an organization, asset management and how we manage the assets that we currently have, as well as governance, testing, tools, and techniques. Each one of these goes into delivering on an IT environment. And I imagine for each of you, you would have run into the same situation that I did. And that is, I was a really great software architect, except I didn't know anything about the PMO, change management, governance, or infrastructure. And that meant I made an awful lot of mistakes early on that I had to learn, well, and unfortunately that my organizations had to learn from my mistakes. And that means that we need to do a much better job of getting a holistic education in IT environment to be able to fully put it to use in building a true business technology strategy. Also, it's the rate of change. Now, I hear a lot of technologists complaining about the rate of change of technology. And I'll tell you, there's a number of schools of thought on this. And one of them is first and foremost, IT technology doesn't change as fast as many of the other fields in the world. Medicine is actually the fastest changing technology or group of technologies in the world. However, they have slowed the rate of adoption so that we utilize safer technologies. So this is really interesting to us because we have to look at when is it safe and a practical. Okay, safe is less important unless we're dealing with human lives. When is it valuable, first and foremost to our organization, to adopt an industry trend? I read an interesting blog today on how you should have a cloud exit strategy. Not exiting cloud altogether, but why you should be prepared to migrate from one cloud provider to another. And I think these are very interesting questions that we need to answer. The IT environment skill set gives us an understanding of how to apply technologies within our business strategies. We want to understand that the architect is all about value and not about belief. Meaning, it's up to the architect to understand the trade-offs related to build buy, agile waterfall, standalone interoperable. There are good reasons to buy technology. There's good reasons to build technology. There's good reasons to host it in the cloud. There's good reasons to bring it in-house. There's good reasons to be waterfall. If you don't believe me, I will. We will get together. We will commission a plane to be built in iterations, and you try to fly someplace on it. Some things are complicated enough and imply and impact human safety enough that they cannot be built in a purely agile, emergent design fashion. Again, that doesn't mean that we're against agile. It simply means that architects start with no preconceived notions. We don't play preferences. We simply go do what's best for our company, and we prove that through supportable and maintainable valuation techniques. Now, quality attributes are the skills that are related to we write non-functional in here all the time. Non-functional is a misnomer. Of course, if you've ever used a website that doesn't perform, then you know that quality attributes are always functionally relevant. Quality attributes are cross-cutting concerns. They are security, reliability, what we would generally call all of the ilities and iliancies. And we've basically grouped those into systemic qualities that have time, cost, requirement, resource, and other kinds of impacts that we want to measure and maintain. So we may look at usability, accessibility, personalization, performance, security, supportability, all of those kinds of things. But we also have to realize as we practice that first and foremost, all things that are useful must be measurable and practical. Now, I want to point out that I was just talking to an individual architect who was responsible for the HR systems of an organization. Now, I asked him a relatively pointed question. One of the systems takes resumes from potential candidates for jobs and posts jobs online. I asked him whether or not that system required 6 nines of availability, i.e. 31 seconds of yearly downtime. And he said, well, of course, that's a great idea. And then I looked at him and I said, really? Because that's going to be expensive. It's going to be less expensive today because he was planning on going to the cloud. And I thought, great. It's less expensive today to provide availability than it used to be. But he had not considered the cost-benefit trade-off from a resume-taking system and the level of sophistication even necessary to host that in a highly available way in the cloud. So each of these things requires us to understand their measurements and their trade-offs. It's also interesting to note that quality attributes often have impacts on each other. Now, this is just a prototype model. Don't follow it. Those it's not fully filled out for you here. But for example, flexibility may negatively impact maintainability or customizability or performance. Each one of these quality attributes may have a positive, a neutral, or a negative impact on another quality attribute. So you can't maximize all quality attributes for all systems. Now we get to design. Now originally our thinking was that design was architecture. Architecture is design. And it is true. All architectures are a design. Of course, all strategies are designs. They're a planned solution to a problem or a planned solution to an identified opportunity. But originally we thought of design as the primary definition of what an architect does. But good design is really about justifications, reasons, and most importantly, the question why. Now, I traditionally in an in-person environment would have asked you, If I were to hand you two documents and tell you that one was, they're both the architecture for the same system. One was written by a senior software engineer, and one was, or engineer, and one was written by a senior architect, both successful in their roles. I would ask you, what is the primary difference between the two? How do you tell the difference? Which one's an architecture? Generally, people will come back with granularity concepts, things like, well, the systems design will be about what or how, or the architecture will be more about the what and a more conceptual view. The actual answer to that question is a great architecture answers the question why. All other things are systems engineering designs, or system of systems engineering designs, or business process designs. Without the reasoning behind decision making, we run into the situation where we are designing solutions that are not good for our organization. That means as we build our design skills, we need to build them more comprehensively, not just tools for design in terms of, using Archimate or using UML. That's fine. Everybody can go buy Eris and it's a good tool. Anybody can go buy an Archimate tool and it's going to be a fine tool for quick modeling. But knowing what to put in those diagrams takes a significantly more a sophisticated understanding of design skills. There's also the things that we deal with on a regular basis, things like architecture descriptions and what makes a good one. What views and what viewpoints should we use for our architecture practice? So when you're looking at this, I want you to be thinking seriously about books like Whole System Design, uh, uh, which talk about an integrated approach to thinking about design concepts. And I also want you to be thinking about design as a fundamental practice for working together across the organization and create an architecture that really stands apart from just design. Now, one of the most popular skills, of course, in the capability areas that we depend on most is human dynamics. These are the skills associated with influencing people and getting and managing and or influencing and interacting with the context of a technology environment and a people environment. That's just soft skills and politics and peer interaction and leadership. One of our greatest challenges as architects is that we face a situation in which we deal with politics as opposed to good practice. And in managing the culture, we have to start to learn to work within those politics and utilize them to accomplish something for the organization. We also have to understand the psychological dynamics and stakeholder dynamics in understanding expectations and how people work within a project or a timeline to deliver on a business strategy. All architects must have strong abilities to lead and mentor from those who can benefit from your skills and knowledge. And we're all going to interact with a large number of peers and must be professionally responsible enough to distance ourselves so that we can play well with others. There are a significant amount of collaboration and negotiation opportunities, presentation opportunities, and writing opportunities where we need to be focused on the quality and over the quantity, and we need to be speaking in the language of our audience as opposed to the language of our technical community, just our technical community. One of my favorite sayings that I regularly suggest is essential is that architecture never happens at your desk. If you're at your desk, you're thinking, and thinking is good, but architecture happens with others. So the vast majority of our architecture work is either building the strategy or getting it executed. The building the strategy part generally happens with others, and the getting it executed part always happens with others, unless you run your own little small business and you're building your own product and you don't have any customers and you don't have any help doing it. Even then, both of those things generally involve others. So I love this book. I got frustrated when I saw it the first time because I've been saying this since I was 12, which is do unto others as they'd like done unto them. So that's a good platinum rule for you there. It's a good book, and it's some way to better understand how personality types interact with each other. So in this foundation body of knowledge, the question is, once you have that, you are an architect. And that's a good thing. Software architect has consistently come in the United States as the top job in all of America. I have not seen this poll in other countries, but my presumption is that this is true in all information and innovation-based economies. Software architect is one of the most strategic roles, including any kind of IT management, that you can find in the world. Should architects write code? Well, first of all, the answer to any question about architecture is it depends. So let me ask you a question. Should business architects write code today? Should infrastructure architects write code today? Should information architects write code today? Solution architect is a dangerous title. Solution architect is not a senior software architect. It is just that senior software architects make up about 60 to 70%, 60 to 70% of the architects in the world. So most architects that you talk to have a software background. A solution architect, based on our information gathering, is actually a person that is focused on the delivery of a project. If your project is delivering a data center, your solution architect is going to have an infrastructure background. If your project is delivering on a BI or data analytics platform, your solution architect is going to have an information architect background. So your question is whether or not software architects should code. First and foremost, if you look at the IT environment skills, you'll see that application development is on the core foundation skill set for all architects. So while I was giving you a smarmy little answer there, the truth is that Iasa suggests that to be an architect, you have to have written code. However, that does not mean that that is your primary responsibility on a day in and day out basis, nor does it mean that you do it on a daily or even weekly or monthly basis, even as a software architect. I was the chief architect for the Sears point of sale replacement, one of the larger pieces of software I've ever worked on. 2,000 stores, 200 terminals a store, you do the math. I didn't get a chance to write a lot of code on that project. However, that being said, as a software architect, I was writing code before this call. So the question of skills relevance to role is a question of engagement model. It does not have a simple answer. Of course, software architects have to maintain their skills within a coding basis. Otherwise, we lose our ability to innovate within a software space. I may not particularly enjoy programming in Angular or Node.js personally, but of course I've done prototypes with them. Otherwise, I lose my ability to innovate utilizing today's latest code bases and today's latest programming paradigms. So the answer to your question is not simple, and anybody who tells you it is just trying to sell you something. The organization you work for and the engagement model you employ at that organization requires a utilization of all 5 pillars throughout all 5 pillars, but not all of them every time. So the notion of architecture and gets really interesting as we look at how to take teams and employ them across the organization with specializations. And this is the toughest part for us. I have to admit, I'm working with an organization this week that has 180 architects. Most of them are solution architects with software backgrounds, which means that they're hurting deeply in the business architecture space. They're also hurting deeply in the information architecture space, and they're missing, in my opinion, missing a lot of innovation that could occur there. But try telling them, but getting business or specialists to work together effectively is a tough thing to do, and it takes strong leadership and a very strong engagement model. Now, I want to point you to isaglobal.org. On that website, you will find a link at the top that says IDABOC. That is, and I'll just give you just a short history real quick. That is the first level of publicly available IDABOC. So for many years, the IDABOC was only available either as a part of our self-paced training or as a part of our training classes. We have made the decision to make the IDABOC free and available for all time. So we are moving all of the knowledge from our training, all of the knowledge from the core knowledge from our training classes into the IDABOC, though the training classes will still teach you how to actually practice those skills. So it doesn't say you're not going to need training, but you will be able to study for all certifications effectively for free, based on the IDABOC going public. So in 2.0, we have a skills taxonomy, or what we call the capability model, and an engagement model, which goes a little bit more into the people, process, role description stuff that we've been talking about. However, in 3.0, we're adding quite a bit more. And just so you know, we're looking for volunteers to join that group. So if you're interested, just contact us on the website. There's a sign-up form and all that kind of stuff. There's a whole bunch of other links on here that are still good and useful, many of which we mentioned: systems, whole system design, innovation, the 5 disciplines, having trouble with your strategy, Blue Ocean, Total Solution. All of these are very good reads. There's a skills assessment that comes with the ISA that you can come work through. Ultimately, though, we hope that you'll get involved and stay involved with the ACS SIG, and also maybe join us for conferences later in the year, or for some of our virtual seminars. I will tell you, one thing that I'm really excited about is that we have a call for speakers going out for June. We have the first 24-hour e-summit at ISA. That's 24 hours straight, 8 a.m. Central to 8 a.m. Central. So we are looking for speakers in this time zone. So if you're interested, let Daryl know, and he'll let us know. Otherwise, stay tuned for that. We hope to maybe co-brand that with the ACS or with others. Anyway, this has been great talking to you tonight. I'm open for any questions you have. I assume the slides would be made available, Daryl? But yes, I mean, I'm sure we can make these available and no problem. Other questions?
Great, thanks, Paul. Yes, any other questions, please do enter them down the bottom left there, and we've got a couple of minutes left if you have anything to ask. Great presentation, Paul. It reminds me of why I'm tired all the time, all those things that we have to consider as architects. It certainly made a lot of sense to me in terms of the types of things that we need to consider, and the engagement that we need, especially around the human dynamics side of things. Just a quick question there from Rick.
The technical architect so there's a couple of what I call chasms. If any of you have read Crossing the Chasm, it was a formative book for me as a product manager early on. But the technical architect is one of the chasms that's formed from our focus on EA as this massive strategy for everything, and business architecture as non-technical staff. Now, in my experience, it is possible to have case studies of success with non-technical architects for a brief period of time, but also in my experience, that period of time is almost always limited. And when I say technical, I'm not talking about their day in and day out role. A business architect's role, if done well, day in and day out, will be technical in some aspects, about, let's call it 30 to 40% of the time, but it will primarily be business strategy, pure business strategy. And the technical side of that means that they will still be able to speak and create technology strategies that are easily transferable to someone like a solution architect. So the question isn't a technical architect in terms of their day in and day out role. The question is the skills that they retain. Now, in ICE's definition, which is by no means the only definition you can find, all architects retain a degree, either higher or lower, of technical skill, and that includes business and enterprise architects. The primary reason globally that people come to architects is for a technology strategy. If you're not technical, you can't develop a technology strategy. There is a secondary reason or benefit to having business and enterprise architects, and that is an advanced business strategy that maps effectively to that technology strategy. So again, you can find competing definitions. However, that is the ISIS stance, and it seems to work. In fact, if you look at, well, I just recently talked to one of the case studies in enterprise architecture as pure strategy, which is from MIT Sloan. And one of their case studies that they were touting about how the business architects were not technical, about 3 years later, fired all their business architects. So that's kind of an interesting thing. This is an unknown, and it's going to remain a debate. Let's see what else we got here. Do you find EA better applied across different industries, private enterprise versus government? I'll tell you, the success rate of architecture engagement models does not seem to have anything to do with industry, though it does outside of the overall investment in technology as strategy. So I see a lot of success in banking. I see a lot of, believe it or not, I see a lot of successes in government. I see believe it or not, I see a lot of successes in government. I see is a significant number of failures. The number of organizations that do it really, 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 really well is very small, and the number of organizations that do it really, really, really poorly is very large. So it's a very tight curve. However, I am seeing most organizations progressing now that we're moving away from big A and back into a little bit more of little a architecture, more solutioning, more business architecture, more penetration throughout the enterprise, as opposed to higher and higher and higher reach up the executive chain.
All right, so just to...
How important is the security role? Absolutely.
The last two questions, Paul.
Go ahead.
I appreciate how late it is there, so we'll just have Ong's and Ed's questions, and then we'll wrap it up, I think.
Okay, great. So quality attributes, security role. The security role is probably one of the more, and having a security architect is probably one of the more important quality attributes to measure. I see 4 quality attributes pretty regularly measured and monitored and maintained. Those are security, performance, RAS, which is actually 3 quality attributes: reliability, accessibility, and scalability, and usability. So those 4 tend to be managed across an enterprise level, and probably should be. Do EA should always adopt a framework like, oh God, no. No, I'd rather you think than just adopt a framework. Engagement models include framework decisions, and TOGAF is just a fine framework, and of course Zachman is just a fine framework as well, and I know John pretty well. But the last thing I want you doing is downloading something and implementing it. Every engagement model for an organization includes many more decisions than just framework. Role, activity, artifact, viewpoint utilization, stakeholder management concerns, value management capabilities. And I will say that most of the frameworks do not have a strong value management capability. They're mostly targeted at modeling and design and artifact generation. I would rather see you have 50 highly skilled architects, and I'll just answer this way, or the last thing I'll say is 50 highly skilled architects will do better and more at an organization without a framework or a process than 50 unskilled architects with the best framework, process, and tool set in the world.
Yep.
And that's where I'll end.
That's a good point. All right, thank you, Paul. That's fantastic, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us tonight, and I think we need to let you go and get some sleep. I know you've got the rest of the course to run over in Sydney, so that's fantastic for everybody listening. Thanks for getting online and taking some of your evening to have a listen to what we had to say. I reiterate what Paul has been saying about the IDABOC material. I was fortunate enough to be able to review a fair bit of the material produced late last year, and there's plenty there, and it's good quality stuff. So get on the site and have a look, and if you've got the time and the inclination, put up your hand and get involved, because that, as much as anything, is what Iasa and what I'm doing here with the SIG and the journal is about. It's about building communities and sharing information and learning and developing together. So I appreciate you taking the time, Paul, and I think I'll wrap it up there. But once again,
Thanks so much.
I really do appreciate you taking the time, and it's good to have you back in the country, and hope we see you back again soon. Okay,
Fantastic.
thanks,
Thank you.
guys.